I'd like to open proceedings by acknowledging the Wadi people, who have always been the traditional custodians of the Illawarra. Their sovereignty has never been ceded. I acknowledge all Aboriginal people who are present today and acknowledge elders past and present. My name is Mike Griffiths. I work in the English department of Wollongong University, and I'm your MC this evening. I pay respect to Aunty Barbara Nicholson, who initiated Ngana Barangarai, the Black Wallaby project, 9 years ago, and who has developed 8 volumes of poetry from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men she and the team conducted workshops within Junee Correctional Centre. Due to COVID, Aunty Barb has been unable to visit the jail at all this year. I'd also like to pay respect to the following people: the Aboriginal consultation team, who provide input and support, the Lord Mayor of Wollongong, Gordon Bradbury, 2 great supporters of the project, whom I'd like to mention are Trevor and Jerome Broden, officers who work within the Junee Correctional Centre. I'd also like to acknowledge the Director of the South Coast Writers Centre, Sarah Nicholson. Thank you all. You give back a lot to a project that returns many things to this community and grounds it. So this is the launch of Dreaming Inside Volume 8. It comes from the Black Wallaby project supported by the South Coast Writers Centre. In recent years, we've started using the words Ngana Barangarai. In recent years, but actually this is what Aunt had in mind all along. There was some talk about making it more accessible for speakers, people who did not speak Wadi or Dharawal. Ngana Barangarai, which means Black Wallaby. I'd like to invite you now to say it with me. Ngana Barangarai. Okay, put them together and let it roll off your tongue. Ngana Barangarai. Thanks, great. You all rock. I'd like now to introduce someone who probably needs no introduction to most of the people in this room, and it's a tribute to her that many of you, all of you, are here tonight. Aunty Barbara Nicholson was inspired to create the Ngana Barangarai project, which publishes Dreaming Inside annually, on a visit to the Riverina many years ago. Dr. Nicholson was born on Kumitichi Reserve. Tough times they were, more dinner times than dinners, she says. Over her long life, she has raised a family, earned a BA DipEd at the University of Newcastle and taught at UNSW and the University of Wollongong. In 2013, Aunty Barb was presented with the Multicultural Communities Council of Illawarra Award for services to the communities of the Illawarra. The next year, in 2014, Aunt won the Nanga Mai Award for excellence in Aboriginal education in New South Wales public schools and was presented with a Doctorate of Laws at the University of Wollongong. Please help me invite Aunty Barb to the floor.
Not allowed, that doesn't have to wear a mask. It's a bit hard to play the ditch with a mask on. I want to acknowledge and pay respects to elders past and present and pay respect to the sacred land that we're on. This year is the first since we started that we couldn't go to the jail because of COVID. But thanks to Jerome and Trevor, the 2 officers from the jail, the inmates have been kept busy writing, and without benefit of any workshops, there's 57, I think, inmates who have written of their own accord with a lot of help and persuasion, I'm sure, from Jerome and Trevor at the jail. They've written stuff, and collectively, the separate items they have contributed is around about 130 separate items. So without us even being at the jail, they've that we've got enough material for volume 9, which is absolutely amazing. And I think it really speaks to the value that the inmate contributors put on the book, on the project. I think Jerome was able to tell me recently that some of the lads just said, oh no, we want to keep the book going. So how good is that? I just think it's a real good testament to the value that they have in the book and the respect that they have for it. But it gives me great pleasure now to introduce you to the star of the show tonight, my very, very dear sister girl, Yvette Holt, a Bidgeri and Wakaman woman, a multi-award-winning poet, editor, academic and photographer of, get this, erotic desert votive imagery landscape. Her literary works have been published nationally and internationally online and in print. She's chairperson of the First Nation Australia's Writers Network, known as FNORN. She's also a director of the board of Australian Poetry. She lives 7 months a year in the central deserts of Australia, and if you heard her on the ABC radio yesterday, she walks more than 2,000 kilometres a year in the countryside around Alice Springs as she reflects on her own writing. That's something of an achievement by itself, and of course through all of these she still manages to be the style icon for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women Australia-wide, a total style icon. She's currently completing her next collection of poetry entitled 3068 Fitzroy North. It's a poetic excavation of psychoanalytical poetry between the chair, the patient and the four walls. She also does comedy. And if we're lucky, she might tell us about erotic desert votive imagery and the excavation of psychoanalytic poetry while throwing in a couple of jokes along the way. I think we're in for something special. Can you help me in welcoming Yvette Holt to the stage?
Oh, thank you. What an introduction. And speaking of introductions, I feel as though I walked into an Illawarra Western with our masks. I'm just waiting for the carriage to arrive with Rio Zorro. Wow. So I really wanted to heavily go into one of the most moving poems I've kind of excavated from Dreaming Inside, but I would need to, impose another voice on you. So this is my regular voice, this is my comedy voice, my psychoanalytical voice. I didn't want to scare you off, actually. And I've got a timer, because I'm not going to go over 12 minutes. Now also, when I went to the Farah Sex Laboratory a few moments ago, I picked up a lovely black scarf. So if any ladies or gentlemen are missing it, I have folded it lovingly with fabric guardianship, and it's on the back table. It was literally on the floor. Thank you, Dale, for your wonderful orchestrated imagery evoking spirit and country from Gimilaroi. So as Aunt said, so I'm a Brisbane girl, I'm a Brisbane Murray, and I'm conscious about my lipstick as it run into the mask. Vanity doesn't stop with cosmetic appearance. So Brisbane girl, working class suburb, Inala. My father's people are Bidgera Nation, which is the second largest nation in Queensland, 380 kilometres northwest of Rockhampton, cave people, so they're tiny. So that may prompt you to ask, Yvette, where do you get your height? You're 5'10" and a half in heels. Afghan. Mother is Aboriginal Afghan. So Atherton Tablelands are far north of Queensland and southwest Taroom. So many thanks are due here this evening by way of journey toward the launching of Dreaming Inside 8. And what I took from reading this volume, which arrived a week and a half ago in the desert, I actually live in the desert 4 months a year and live in Melbourne 8 because I need to self-isolate to write. Well, beyond the scope of DNA barbed wire, colonial bricks and settlement mortar, and please, if you think tonight is political, you would be right. As the wonderful Aboriginal author Romaine Morton once said, living black is all political. The elements that go into the making of an 8th volume is Australian truth-telling in its finest hour. The telling of what lays beneath the bed covers, the locked doors, the very fine print of the bricking company that supplemented some sunlight and, if you're lucky, some air. But what is a launch? I would ask you to consider. This is the first Australian story, starting with something that is most unfamiliar to a lot of people who have had gratitude in a land that inherently has been an additive to the men who have laboured in these pages. And beyond that, the absence of fatherhood, grandfatherhood, guardianship, son, nephew, family, community. Beyond that, there are the people who must work with honesty and truth and integrity, one would hope, in the system that keeps them there, well anchored above and beyond post 200, post teen years. And I also acknowledge those who do it with great truth and integrity, two of whom are here tonight, Jerome and Trevor. What I've taken from conversations, from the breadth of the writing from the inmates, has just really washed over me with such an intense and fierce commitment to the continuum of publishing First Nations literature. And as a publisher, as an editor, I'm very interested in the fact that these gentlemen submitted their first draft. Unheard of, unbelievable, wouldn't be accepted in the outside world. When Aunty Barb graced me with such knowledge, I thought, what do you mean you didn't edit? Well, she said I edited to the point where the arrangements of words and exclamations around titles, etc. She said, but this was what they had submitted. Can you imagine? Forget about scratching beneath the surface. These gentlemen are living through a second life cycle of isolation. They've been under a COVID. Some on remand for 18 months. Some indefinitely. if I were to do anything in my leadership role as chairperson of the First Nations of Australian Writers Network, as a director at the Wheeler Centre on the Australian Poetry of Society, if I could flip the script in the psychoanalytical forum to introduce mainstream Australia into this wheelbarrow that they carry, they laden, I am so endlessly fascinated and grateful for the opportunity to have been invited. 3 weeks, I actually live outside Alice Springs, so every now and then I take 3 weeks in Alice Springs, and I was on holidays. And I have to thank Simon for pursuing me since last March to come down here. But as I said, he didn't have to wrestle my arm because it was under Aunty Barb's instructions. And I have a feeling that you all know what Aunty Barb's instructions are like in this room. As I see your eyes widen behind the masks. Will I ever see Dreaming Inside Volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? Will I ever see it read in North Sydney on Bondi Beach? I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist to see this in Better Read Than Dead on King Street. I'm an optimist to see it entered in an anthology award at State and Territory Literary Awards.
Really want to thank again the South Coast Writers Centre, the Wollongong Art Gallery, for their hard work in getting us here tonight and keeping us COVID safe. I also want to thank some sponsors and partners of the Black Wallaby Ngana Barangarai project, the Geo Group Incorporated, Sydney Writers Festival, RMIT University, shout out to Crystal McKinnon, Create New South Wales, Wollongong City of Innovation, the Boat Harbour Motel, which houses some of our guests, the University of Wollongong, and the Wollongong Art Gallery again. Importantly, thanks to Yvette, Judy, Lockie, and Simon for reading so bloody well. And thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. Thanks to Aunty Barb again for bringing this all together and being its warm centre. If you haven't already, have a look at those books and buy one that supports this incredible project and that you can get inside the heads of those who are dreaming inside. My name is Mike Griffiths. Thank you.